So we're now going to go to hear from Vaishnavi Sundar. She's from India. She's an independent filmmaker, feminist, writer, and women's rights activist, and also the country contact for Women's Human Rights Campaign in India. She'll be talking about the Hijra and transgenderist cultural appropriation. Over to you, Vaishnavi.
I start with a disclaimer that I'm not a sociologist, anthropologist, academician, or a lawyer. My modest knowledge in the matter comes from gathering information online, via books, papers, and articles written on the subject of Hijras, eunuchs, Indian third gender, among many other names that these men are called, and the unique position of being a woman who isn't afraid to point out the problems with extremist trans rights activism in India and elsewhere in the world. All information in this presentation was gathered over a course of time, and I claim no rights over the same. There will be a reading and reference list on YouTube for those who wish to pursue the topic further. Eunuchs are known to have been part of Chinese royal court for millennia, as in many civilizations like the Assyrian Empire, Rome, Byzantium, and many countries in South Asia. Typically, eunuchs served as palace servants. Their sexual impotence made them trustworthy guards to look after royal women. In some civilizations, they used to command armies and serve as spies. During the 17th century, when the Dutch East India Company was set up, they were shocked to see the power the eunuchs held in imperial households. Eunuchs, or Khwaja Siras, the Persian term for men with removed or non-functional sexual organs, they were both slaves and slave owners. And they were also encouraged to sustain the system of slavery, much to their own disadvantage. Their ambiguous body put them in a unique position in the Mughal setup. They formed an integral part of both worlds, of the Mughal harem as well as the Mughal public sphere. The word harem is Arabic for forbidden, and the harem has been particularly a feature of Muslim and Chinese societies. Royal harems depend on eunuchs. They are castrated as slaves or criminals, or mutilated in adolescence by their families in the hope for material gain. The power and wealth of eunuchs is common knowledge of harem societies. Their disability ironically gives the eunuchs certain very real advantages in the form of wealth and power. There is also a record of eunuchs' participation in Islamic history. British traveler Eldon Rutter, in his travelogue, The Holy Cities of Arabia, wrote, "The reasons why eunuchs are specially employed in the mosque is that in the event of any problems that arise concerning women, or in the event of a woman appearing near the sanctum in unseemly attire or in a state of uncleanliness, they may handle such offenders, the Hijras may handle such offenders and expel them without impropriety, as the eunuchs are not really men in the full sense of the word." There were other travelers who explained the presence of the eunuchs in more functional ways. The 18th century explorer Carsten Niebuhr explained, "It is undoubtedly because of these treasures that the tomb of Muhammad is guarded by 40 eunuchs who are not tempted to steal anything from it in order to profit for their descendants. For there will be none. The association of eunuchs with the Prophet's tomb invested them with a certain sense of power that was sacred. As guardians of Prophet's tomb, eunuchs became a symbol of authority." In Hindu mythology, Shikhandi, who was a woman reborn as a man, was considered the key to defeating the Kaurava army in the Mahabharata. Lord Shiva transformed himself in a form called Ardhanarishwara, half man and half woman, which is worshipped all over India. Mohini, an incarnation of Vishnu, copulates with Shiva and create another god called Ayyappa. One would think how the hell that's even possible. But then in our mythology, we had flying monkeys too, so what do you know? Arjuna, a character in Mahabharata, receives a curse from Urvashi that he has to live in exile for a year as a eunuch. He served as a dance tutor in the royal private chambers and had full access to the women. Some curse that. Aravan, the word in Tamil translates to the son of a snake. was offered to be killed for goddess Kali to ensure the victory of Pandavas in a war. The only condition was that Aravan should spend the last night of his life as a married man. No woman was willing to come forward to marry Aravan as he was going to be killed right after marriage. Lord Krishna took the form of Mohini, a woman, and married him. It is believed that this is why the Hijras of Tamil Nadu call themselves Aravanis. In Kuvagam, a town in Tamil Nadu, there is an 18-day festival every year where the village trans women dress up as his wives and then mourn his death. There is a strong belief in the community, thanks to all these historic references, that these castrated men possess divine powers, one that God bestowed upon them for their hijras, a self-fulfilling boon that is often cited to claim their saintly status in the society. As ritual performers, they are viewed as vehicles of the divine power of the mother goddess, which transforms their impotence into the power of life. Several occult Hindu ritual practices involve male transvestism as a form of devotion. The male devotees in some sects imitate feminine behavior, including simulated menstruation. They also may engage in sexual acts with men as acts of devotion, and some devotees even castrate themselves in order to have a more near approximate female experience, so that they can get through to the God that they pray for. But ritual dancing and divine powers aside, the livelihood of most modern day Hijra, which is not largely talked about, is through prostitution. Practically all eunuchs, owing to poverty, illiteracy, and depravity, resort to prostituting themselves to men. Dr. Renata Syed, a German Indologist, wrote a book on the life of third gender in India and Pakistan. The two countries follow the same tradition, she said. The Hijras in Pakistan are Muslims, of course, and as long as they respect the Sunnite Islam, they are accepted. They share the culture of Hijras in India, leaving their native families at a young age, living together in houses with extended families with a guru, a boss, who rules over the chelas, the pupils. She said, Hijra is a term in the languages of North India and has no equivalent in any other language as there is no translation at hand. The false equivalence of transgender cannot describe the Hijra, which is thereby lost in translation. Other than Hijras, Hijras being a mostly North Indian word, there are men who only exhibit femininity on occasions to be accepted as a Hijra. They are often on tenterhooks with the Hijra community and get accused of being a fake Hijra. These men, collectively called as kotis, may even marry women and have children. There are also young boys who may or may not be castrated and would be given away to perform temple duties, and they are called jogtas. The contention of the Hijra community with kotis and jogtas stem from the fact that they have not renounced their sexual desire and or that they engage in the institution of marriage with a woman, both of which the Hijras claim to renounce. A man who marries a woman and bears children doesn't qualify to be a Hijra. There have been cases when men, for money or sexual arousal, claim to be Hijras and live like one in a sort of a double life. But only a castrated man who willfully renounces familial life and live a life of a celibate for the service of the goddess qualifies to be a Hijra, they say. Even if this directly contradicts their need to be sexually active, albeit with men, Hijras are seen in the gray between asceticism and sexual drive and desirability. In South India, where I am from, Hijras do not have the cultural role that they do in the North India, like singing and dancing. So the term for effeminate men, we often use words like koja in Telugu or pottai in Tamil. These are epithets that connote a derogatory meaning of a cowardly or a feminine male. Hijras also not always mean homosexual. It is widely believed in India that a man may become impotent through engaging homosexual relationships. Homosexuals who become impotent may identify themselves as Hijras, not because they have sexual relationships with men, but because they are impotent. In the book, Neither Man or Woman by Serena Nanda, she talks to many Hijra men. One of them said, "We are all men, born as men. But when we look at women, we don't have any desire for them. When we see men, we like them. We feel shy. We feel some excitement. We want to live and die as women." I want to quickly take you through the process of castration. It is, to simply put, it is painful and horrifying. The Hijras call the emasculation operation as the term nirvan. It is believed to be a liberation from the finite human conscience to the dawn of a higher conscience, to being a better person. Emasculation is explicitly a rite of passage, moving the man who is operated on from the status of an ordinary impotent male to that of a Hijra. Through this operation, the man dies and a new person endowed with sacred power, a Hijra, is reborn. Traditionally, the emasculation operation was performed as part of the initiation into the Hijra cult, and it often happens at the site of a temple. In 1888, this practice was outlawed. Today, the operation may be performed wherever the Hijras are. The operations are always performed in secret because there was a time when emasculation was a criminal offense according to the Indian Penal Code. Now, however, such surgeries, in line with the Transgender Act, are made available free of cost in every state's government hospitals. The Hijra emasculation operation is conducted by another Hijra, not a doctor, called Daima. Daima loosely translates to the word midwife, and they use this especially to signify a sort of a rebirth. This Daima makes two quick opposite diagonal cuts by calling the goddess's name over and over again. The organs, both penis and testicles, are completely separated from the body. A small stick is put into the urethra to keep it open. When the cut is made, the blood gushes out and nothing is done to stem the flow. The blood is considered to be the male part and should be drained off. They believe it is important to have a Hijra Daima do the operation. If others do it, for example, the sex change doctors who are available in hospitals, if they do it, they try to stop the flow of blood, and that is considered less effective ritually. A 40-day recovery period, similar to that of a woman after childbirth, follows the operation. There is an ongoing debate about whether Hijras, Aravanis, Kinnars, Khwaja Siras want to be considered as women, and the current trans rights activism leaves no scope for their voices to be heard in the matter. Putting a number of growing population, it says about 1,000 youths are converted into eunuchs in Delhi every year, forcefully. A spokesperson from All India Hijra Kalyan Sabha, an organization that seeks to provide welfare for people within the eunuch community. It was formed in 1984 to protect the rights of eunuchs. They say that most eunuchs in the country are not transvestites or hermaphrodites. They are actually castrated men. One spokesperson said, young and addicted boys are abducted and then introduced into homosexuality by the agents of the eunuchs' gurus. Castration are forced on them, and ironically, very few people gather the courage to retaliate. And if they do, they are threatened with far more grievous violence. During an investigation, a victim of forced castration said he was abducted, made an addict of brown sugar and hashish, and then pushed into homosexuality. This way, the eunuch gurus have made huge sums. The Guru Chela system, a sort of a social hierarchical model that these eunuchs follow, it ensures that men have to prostitute themselves and offer the sum to the Guru, who they sometimes call their mother. And this is how they live out the rest of their life sometimes. One person said, the Hijra mafia that controls the castration operates secretly throughout the country. They have a network of Hijra groups where a newly castrated eunuch is auctioned to the highest bidder, who is again a Hijra who will perform the function of a guru. This auction is conducted with claps. A single clap would mean 1,000 rupees. A fair, clean-limbed boy can earn more and attract more bids, a higher price on his head. Victims are threatened with death if they break the silence. Arun Kumar from an NGO that works with eunuchs says that the statistics don't reveal how kids and youths are kidnapped for prostitution. He said, eunuch gurus and their paid agents get these kidnapped youngsters addicted to opium and drive them towards homosexuality. Eventually, they are castrated in a gory and risky operation. general secretary from the same organization, Hijra Kalyan Sabha, who's again a victim, hit out at the eunuch gurus. He said, these gurus have become millionaires by making these eunuchs service of homosexual men. He was formerly called as Rajendra, but he was castrated. Another man said, I lost my parents and siblings to a communal strife in Kashmir, but a worse fate was in store for me when the eunuchs picked me up and brought me to Delhi. In no time, I was introduced to hashish, and I was made to live the rest of my life as a prostitute. I must point out that the books referred in my talk and the articles that are mentioned are written by women and people who believe in liberal feminist ideas of gender. There is no radical feminist perspective laid out about the Indian transgenderism, the Indian Hijras, the eunuchs at all. These women who write about the eunuchs believe, that gender is a spectrum and that sex dimorphism is some colonial construct. But these books are quoted because they are, even as they glorify the Hijras, the only ones that give a closer look at their lives. This talk barely scratches the surface of the situation in India and the problems associated with using Hijras to serve the present trans movement, but by both people in India as well as the global liberal feminists, especially in the West. It still baffles me how the existence of a group of adults who, for reasons such as homophobia and depravity, engaging in some form of superstitious cultural quest for acceptance, equate to the normalization of prescribing puberty blockers and harmful procedures to children. In India, the activists have done a really good job in picking on the wound of historic guilt of the masses because of the way we treated homosexuals and members from the marginalized caste in the past. While definitely people within the community need complete protection and must face absolutely no discrimination of any kind, how is it fair that a group of people benefit exclusively by nullifying or stomping on the rights of another? With the trans rights activists fighting for self-ID and some men contesting in female-only wards reserved for women in election, the future in India looks bleak at best. I worry and spend sleepless nights thinking about the little girls in India. As hopeless as it may seem, I just keep wishing that a lone battle is still better than nothing. Thank you.